So if you've been having trouble prompting for your AI generations or your designs or your mockups, I want to help you. And you don't have to be a master prompt architect because we've actually prepared some projects, some files, some assets for you so that you can craft the perfect prompt. And in this video, I'm going to go over some of those projects, and then we're going to go over some supporting material for you. So I'm going to go over basic terminology for prompting, what makes a good prompt, so what you should put into it, the prompt structure, which is what I know a lot of people are struggling with, best use cases for different models, which is another area of unknowing which model I should use for what kind of prompt. And then lastly, we'll go over some advanced prompting strategies if that's something that you're into. So the first thing I want to show you is that in Kittl, if you were to type in prompt up here at the top, so you are going to see some of these prompt bundles here, some film photography, editorial, vintage memory, some strange stuff, some natural textures, and we are actually building out a lot of these. The Kittl team is, and let's go into a couple of them before I get into some of the basics and some terminology and things like that. So here is one of them. This is one I like a lot, and even tells you which models are being used. So we've got Flux Pro, Flux 1.1, and we're also using ChatGPT Image 1. By the way, if you need to know how to get to these, you can go over to Kittl AI, where you can explore, and if you go to tools, you're going to see the sets generator, the imagery style, and the design generator. And by the way, we're trying to make the AI even more easily accessible, so you might see it over in the left hand side, or you may see it down here where you can actually just start prompting, and you'll be able to go over into the settings button right here and actually choose which one you want. So you may see this over here in the left hand panel at the moment. That's totally fine. You may see it here. It's the same exact functionality. We're just playing around with where it's moving. So it might be over here in the left hand where it says Kittl AI, might be down here at the bottom, but you can see here Ideogram, Seedream, ChatGPT, Nano Banana. I love Nano Banana, Flux, Google Image 4. They're all here. Okay. So that's one thing to note while you're looking through these, is that we're always going to give you what we're using, and then we're going to give you some prompt building blocks. So we've got different style terms, we've got composition terms, we've got mood terms that we're using to then create some of the prompts. So you can see here is an example of the phone on the left, and then with the prompt we're using a tight close-up shot, so there are more of those stylistic art direction words, and then we're using words like the year, retro, nostalgic, okay, and then it's giving you right here the engine. So while we're looking at some of this, I want to go over some of the basic terminology so that some of this kind of resonates and makes a little bit more sense. So when we're thinking about what a prompt is, we're always going to think about it as instructions that tell the AI what you want to create. Now, I know that's obviously very, very obvious and easy to understand, but the specific AI system is going to be trained in order to perform different things. So Flux might be better at, kind of a surrealism or a more artistic thing, where ChatGPT Image 1 or a Seedream might be good for actually creating like what a physical person might look like, right? So they're going to be trained for different things, and they're going to excel at different kinds of content creation. So a lot of these models are going to have like a sampling or a temperature. Now, when we're talking about temperature, we're going to talk about value. So higher value models produce more creative, but they potentially are less predictable with the results. So that's something where you might put in the prompt and it may generate something that looks and feels and is colored the way you want it exactly, but it was not quite as predictable as you wanted it to be, okay? So there are going to be lower value models that create something more consistent, but maybe it takes a lot more tweaking to get it how you want it. So when we talk about changing the temperature of maybe your prompt or just deciding which model you're going to use, that's what we're talking about. And then when we talk about parameters or settings, these are the adjustable values that are going to influence how the AI generates content. So these are going to include things like aspect ratio, image resolution, how much emphasis to the style should you be giving it, and then obviously the quality. So is it going to be, do you need to designate that it's ultra 4K or hyper realistic? And some of these settings we're actually starting to include more of in the tool to help you get exactly what you want. For example, image resolution, we want that to be the highest quality for you, but aspect ratio is one thing where for certain models we're actually already giving you a ton of different aspect ratios that you would want. But what everybody is obviously mostly into and what they want to know is what makes a good prompt. So So when we are crafting the prompt, and then obviously in some of these you're going to see examples, we want to include the details, including subject, setting, mood, lighting, style, and perspective. So if you want to think about the big six, and maybe not everything needs to be as defined. If we're going to talk about a chair and all you want is the chair, and you want the chair to be red, and you want it to be a metal red chair on a blank background, that may be enough. Okay, when you prompt that in and you hit transparent and you make sure the image is transparent, that may be enough. But if I go through this again, we're talking about subject, setting, mood, lighting, style, and perspective. Those are going to be your big six important things. And then you're going to want to structure that. You're going to want to organize your prompt that would be logical, starting with the main concept and then adding your details after it. That's why we're saying the subject comes first. So what is it that we're trying to generate? What is it we're trying to edit? What is the scene that we're trying to paint? And then after that, we're going to include our technical details. So for image gen, we're going to specify things like the camera type, the lens type, the lighting conditions, and then other more technical things. And that's where people maybe fall apart. Maybe they don't have the language. Maybe they don't have the understanding that a 35 millimeter may look different than a 50 millimeter, and hard flash might look different than golden hour lighting. And that's okay. That's why we put some of these things together so that you can go in and mimic your prompts based on the things that we've already made. You can take those key terms, those tools, like the little prompt boxes here that show you all of the different style terms, and then you can start weaving those into your own prompt. Then we're going to want to talk about reference styles. So you're going to mention a specific art style. You're going to mention maybe an artist or an aesthetic that will guide the AI towards a particular look. And then we always want to give the positive instructions. So we're going to tell it what you want rather than what you don't want. And I know that that is one thing that I have seen a lot of people doing is, and myself included, I'll say don't include any red or don't include whatever. That's probably not as good or helpful as only use greens and blues. Sometimes I find that to be a lot more effective than telling it to negate something or offset something if I just be more specific with what I want to see. Okay, so the prompt structure is the framework to organize your request for the generation, and you want to make sure that you're popping in all of those necessary details. So that's going to lead you to a much more consistent and accurate result. So if we look at another example here, so we have the wildlife photography bundle that's done with Seedream. Okay, so you can see Seedream up here in the top. Again, we've got prompt building blocks for you to check out. So we have those stylistic terms over here. We also have those, what is the medium that we want to shoot in? So macro shot, top-down shot, aerial shot. That's what I'm saying. If you are not really sure about what kind of words you should be using, we've already put these into the bundles for you. So things like motion blur, striking contrast, vivid colors, hard shadow. And then you can see that you can get some really, really cool stuff. And sometimes the prompts don't need to be so long. I think that's another thing as I see people building stories around their prompts, which can be effective and can be helpful. And we'll look at some examples of that. But depending on the engine, you will not need to put so much effort into the narrative. So this just says a deep sea underwater macro shot, tight framing, a moon jellyfish. The jellyfish is luminous against the dark water, surrounded by specks, inspired by professional underwater photography, nature documentaries. So one thing that I would say that I also see a lot is when I'm looking at people's projects or work, the entire prompt is just completely connected with commas. And for some reason, I've found that, especially with using our models in Kittl AI, ending the sentence and then holding shift and hitting enter to like create some space helps kind of designate, maybe if you want to build your prompt based on all those 6 characteristics that I was talking about, it just gives it more understanding to say like, here's the subject, here's what I want it to be, and here's what's happening. So we know we're going to have a deep sea underwater shot. Obviously the jellyfish is the subject, and then we're giving it those stylistic terms like specs, inspired by professional underwater photography. Here's another one, flat shot, top-down angle, precise lighting, center composition. So if it's something like, a moth or a butterfly or something like this, we want it to be symmetrical. A white Luna moth with yellow and green markings set against a completely solid black background. The image is inspired by nature science and archival photography. So very, very similar. And you can see all of these are not very, very long prompts. Here's another example where I know some of the prompts are going to be a little bit longer. So these are being used with Seedream and Google Image Gen 4. Again, more prompt building blocks if you need it. So mood words, lighting words. We have more stylistic words. So here's one that builds a little bit more of a story. So you have a surreal scene, wide shot, dimly lit, cinematic lighting. And then here is what we want to generate. Indoor pool with deep turquoise tiles covering the walls, floors. The architecture is cathedral-like with high ceilings featuring pointed arches and tall columns. Square skylights above cast a soft glowing light into the space. That would be these right here. Creating reflections on the water. Then now we see the reflections of the handles here. Water streams from the skylights into the pools. Metal ladders extend from the pools up to the pool's surface. The overall mood is quiet, surreal, and otherworldly, minimalist, and geometric design, liminal space. Now, with Seedream 3, which in my opinion is obviously not as strong as Seedream 4, this is where we're talking about the predictable versus the unpredictableness. In my opinion, this prompt probably nails about 95-94% of what we want to see. We fall apart a little bit when we're talking about the water streams from the skylights coming into the pools, whereas here it looks like they're coming out of the walls. Still realistic, I could see that definitely happening. This might be one of 4 generations, and it might have taken the 4th generation to get the water to come from here. That just depends on what you're comfortable with, and you may look at this and be like, oh, actually that's the scene that I wanted. I'm pretty much happy with that. Let's look at another one. Again, we have surreal top-down shot, winding stairwell of a 70s style apartment building. Stairs are carpeted green, ornate wallpaper. Lighting is warm and image is slightly grainy with vibrant colors. Overall mood is quiet, surreal, lonely. Cinematic lighting. So yeah, I mean, Google Image Gen 4 is very, very good. So you can see that this is already not as in-depth as this one up here with Seedream 3, and it got us what I would believe is probably a much more closer, tight, specific image than even this would be, and it looks, in my opinion, a little bit more realistic, which is probably what people were going for. Let's go to another one. This looks like something that would have been in Severance, probably.
Whose horse is that?
Back to Seedream 3, surreal photo of a black horse in the middle of an empty white office. So this one, where these have been leading with the type or style of shot they want to see, this is leading with the subject specific, although it does have surreal photo of a black horse, white office, muted fluorescent green. The office has 90s interior and white walls. Sense of isolation. So this is good right here. This is another good tip. There's a sense of isolation and emptiness here. The overall mood is liminal, cinematic, surreal, almost otherworldly. So I like that. It makes a lot of sense. Why would a horse be in an office that's very, very gloomy? That's all of Severance, honestly. Great, great, great show if you haven't seen it already. And then here's another one that's very interesting. Again, Google Image Gen 4, you're going to see some of them. The prompts really aren't needed that much. Let's go back and talk about essential image prompt structure tips. So what I mentioned, and I'm going to give you some of these examples, and you can see them up here on the screen in terms of like the frame, the prompt that you should kind of start with is a subject first approach. So we're going to begin with the main subject before adding a whole bunch of details. And then you're going to layer your details moving from essential to optional. So we're going to think subject, setting, style, and then after that, details. You got to make sure you're going to have your subject and your setting. If your setting is blank or not necessary, obviously you can leave it out, but you want to make sure you have your subject and your style, obviously. Otherwise, you're not going to get something close to what you want. Then you're going to start using stronger descriptors like vivid adjectives. You want to talk about mood. You want to talk about atmosphere. Then you're going to start separating your concepts with commas and periods. That helps the AI distinguish between the relevance of your request. And then you're going to weigh your important elements. So some models are going to allow more emphasis and syntax like concept, or maybe you need to like put that aside in parentheses. Sometimes it just understands what you're doing. Depends on if you're making something hyper realistic, or something artistic. Then you want to make sure you're including perspective, close up, aerial, top down, isometric, whatever the composition is. And then you can end with your quality boosters, things like highly detailed, hyperrealism, award-winning, cinematic style, whatever it is. So we have an example of a preferred prompting. You can start, in my opinion, you can have these technical details come prior to or after. We saw examples of that in some of these prompt bundles before. So here's one that says technical details plus lighting. So that could say top-down shot shot, comma, golden hour amber lighting or something like that, or aerial shot, first dawn foggy lighting or something like that. And then you could go into your subject or your main concept plus whatever the perspective or the composition is, plus the action pose, plus what the setting or what the environment is. And then after that, we are going to have what the style, what the aesthetic is. So an example prompt might be an editorial photograph, soft diffused studio lighting. And then after that, we're getting into that subject main concept. A giant pair of sunglasses. Okay, what is the composition? Placed naturally on top of a mountain hill. So they're going to just be placed, so there's not really any extra actiony stuff happening here. And then the mountain hill is obviously the setting or in the environment. And then what is the style or the aesthetic? We're going to have refined details, a polished finish, feels luxurious with an adventurous theme because we are, after all, on a hill, a mountain hill. Now, you can also do this in a different way. You can have your subject, main concept, plus your setting, plus your pose, plus your lighting, plus your style, then your technical details. So you could have a giant pair of sunglasses placed naturally on top of a mountain in an editorial photograph. Use soft, diffuse studio lighting to create a clean, aspirational tone, emphasizing the sleek design and pristine environment. Focus on refined details and polished finish to convey a sense of luxury and adventure. So you can see how those can be flipped back and forth. I have started to see more people put these technical details and lighting first before crafting the rest of the main prompt. Personally, I have found both of them to give me what I want. I would encourage you just kind of maybe try back and forth which kind of structure or frame you want to use for your prompt, whether or not you want to put those technical details first, which a lot of models do prefer because they know that they're going to start with that art direction first. Or if you want to just prompt it regularly, I would consider using both. So what are some best use cases for the different models? And when we're talking about use cases also, we're talking about image generation, we're talking about graphic design work with lots of detail. We might also talking about conceptual work or blueprints or schematics or things like that. And so if we're going to think about graphic design work, obviously we're thinking about Ideogram. Both Ideogram 2 and Ideogram 3 have really great quality when you need the absolute highest quality of graphic design outputs and not wanting to wait for generation. These are really, really great for producing your final assets that require a lot of detail. Okay, so you may have a premium chocolate package or you may have a minimal modernist logo. If we're talking about detailed images with super fine control and detail, then you might want to use something like ChatGPT Image 1. And we have an HD and a regular version. The HD takes a little bit longer in Kittl versus the one that's Image 1 that's not HD. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds. But this is what you're going to use probably when your prompting is more complex. Like I said, you're building more of a story and you're going to have a lot of specific requirements. It is pretty great for attributing the accuracy to what you want. I have found both in ChatGPT Image 1 and Google Image Gen 4, like some of the ones that we looked at already. If we're talking about something that has a fast workflow for concepting, so more of sketching, building out blueprints, building out variations of sketches or maybe icons or something that you're working at and you're not necessarily worried about a finalized design, Flux is great for that. So we have Flux Schnell and we also have Flux 1.1 Pro. There's a couple other models in there too, but this is great for professional work for concepting. So maybe you need something for concept art, like I said, for an icon pack, or maybe even for a schematic or a blueprint or a plan or something like that. And it can be really, really fast. If we're going to move to more realistic and more photographic imagery that you would potentially think is real, again, Google Image Gen 4 excels at this. I think it has just been really good at creating highly realistic photoreal images. We use this a lot for creating mock-ups for things that we're going to use with our designs, whether it's a billboard or a jacket or a water bottle or whatever it is. If we want super stylized artistic work, so maybe we're working on like a cyberpunk design or maybe we're working on like a comic book character, so something that's going to be more illustrative and more artistic, both Seedream 4 and 3 are good for this. They excel at the more artistic, creative interpretation. And so if you want something stylized, these artistic renders are going to be great in Seedream 3 and 4. I think 4 is obviously better. And then we can't forget about Nano Banana. I believe that Nano Banana is best for using Kittl flows. We have tons of videos of this already on the channel. You should go check out those videos. When working with the Nano Banana model, it's going to give you the most consistent results. So we talk about Nano Banana a lot for editing. So when you're editing an image and you want the dress of a character to stay exactly the same, or you already have your logo and you want to put that logo on something, but you don't want anything to change, you want it to be exactly as it is, Nano Banana Banana is incredible. And that's a Google model, by the way, but it is the best for editing, iterating, changing what the image already will be. So you could have a mock-up of a person sitting in a chair, and I already showed this in a previous video, but maybe we want to change the environment of the person sitting in that chair. Maybe he was outside, maybe now he's inside in a pizza parlor or something like that. And it keeps the person, it keeps the chair, it keeps the graphic on the shirt, and it changes the environment around it. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about editing. And it's really, really great in terms of consistency and speed, especially when using it with Kittl flows. So let me just show you an example of what I mean with Nano Banana and Kittl Flow. So you can see here's another bundle. I love this one, film photography. This was made with ChatGPT Image 1, and you still have your prompt building blocks. So these are really, really great. I'm going to link these down below, as well as just the full search query for you to go to check out. But let's say that we have this image. Why not? Let's go ahead and create a artboard. We're going to take this image and move it and be a little bit bigger. And let's say just like this. Okay, and we're going to add a smartboard right here. Now again, you may be seeing your prompt box over here on the right side. You may see it down here at the bottom. Again, we're always working with how it can be better implemented. If we want to get it away, we can always just hit the X. This is a little bit more integrated. You can see here it's on Nano Banana. I can change it, but I'm going to keep it on Nano Banana. And so where I just gave you tons of prompting knowledge on how to craft a specific prompt, what we're worried about right now with editing the image with Nano Banana is just the edits. So for example, change the icing color to blue, keep everything else the same. I don't know why you would need the cupcakes to be blue. I'm just trying to show you an example of editing the image that's really, really good with Nano Banana, as you can see right here. It even has the sprinkle that's on this one and the 4 that are on this one exactly the same. This one is kind of disheveled just like this one. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about editing. My prompt was not very intense. I didn't have to build a story for Nano Banana. I just wanted to take the image and change it. And that's how you can see if we have a mock-up and we want to change the environment of the mock-up. Nano Banana is extremely, extremely powerful for that. But again, I would encourage you to go and check out all of these different prompt bundles that you can click into. Check out the prompts. Some are going to be small, some are going to be long, and you can take these prompt building blocks along with that model, that framework I gave you, and really start crafting and creating your own prompts in Kittl. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is some advanced prompting strategies, and we can go a little bit more in depth in other videos. You let me know in the comments if that's something you want. Obviously, we're really looking at imagery along with prompts that we've already made with the building blocks that I want you to go and use. But if you want live time kind of crafting, experimenting with prompts, let me know if that'd be helpful. You can comment down below. But when we're talking about advanced prompting strategies, we want to think about model category. So for the graphic design models, we established that ideogram 2 and ideogram 3 are exceptional with quality. Now, to have a little bit more of an advanced prompt guide for that, so we're going to specify the exact text content in quotes. So if we are trying to generate a graphic of a welcome card or a wedding invitation, and we want it to say "you are invited" in vintage or Victorian lettering, the "you are invited" that's on that main card needs to be in quotation marks. Don't leave it up to chance or guesswork for the AI to figure out which text in the midst of your prompt is supposed to be actually in the prompt. Now we know that ideogram is good at text, but let's make sure that we just set it apart in those quotes for it. We want to include this typographic style. So I said it just a second ago, for making a wedding invitation that we want to be vintagey or Victorian, then we want to include the typography style, vintage serif typography or vintage script typography. Then we want to define the color schemes and the specific color names or hex codes. It can do that really well. If you give it the hex code of a certain vintage gold or green or pastel red or something, it can do that. After that, we want to mention the use case. So if it's a card, say card. If it's a poster, say poster, and it will help you in your generation to give the AI that context. Then make sure you are specifying dimensions. So if it's going to be horizontal, just say horizontal layout or vertical layout or portrait layout. Depending on your aspect ratio that you're selecting in Kittl AI, it'll do most of that for you, but you can always extra specify that at the end. If we are going to create some fast generations, we established that Flux and Flash are really good for these. Flash, I would say, is for something simple. Flux a little bit after that next level, but it's faster, right? So with Flux and with Flash, we're going to keep the prompts very direct, very concise. So not a lot needs to happen. So if we want a kawaii style horse, tell it kawaii style horse, or whatever scene you're trying to build, but don't necessarily include an entire narrative. Focus on essential elements only. Use very clear descriptive language. So if the kawaii horse is laying down, or if it's on a mountain, or if it's whatever it is, just be clear, be descriptive, but be very, very concise. Don't create a complex scene. We have found that with Flux and with Flash, the complex scenes are too much. You really just need to create the asset, and then you can use a different model like Seedream or ImageGen 1 to make your whole scene. And you're obviously wanting to prioritize speed over intricate details with these, so don't make the prompt so long. If we are going to be talking about the photography models, so this is going to move from Flux to Flux 1.1 Pro. You're going to use something like Google ImageGen 4. Maybe you're going to use ChatGPT Image 1 HD. You want to do things like include camera specifications. And it may take you going online and looking at what different millimeter lenses are when you're looking at a photograph. So you can look up examples, or Pinterest is another really great place to do this. 35 millimeter vintage portrait, or 50 millimeter lens photography, or aperture 1.8, or f-stop 2.8, or harsh flash, or whatever it is. You can use Pinterest to find those, or even Google, or whatever it is. But if you can include those camera specifications, it's going to give you something much more close to what you want. Then make sure you specify those lightings. Like I said, golden hour, studio lighting, natural light, first dawn, late evening, sunset. It can figure out enough from those contextual clues of what light looks like in your prompt. Then you can mention your composition technique. So use the rule of thirds, leading lines, horizontal, equator line, whatever, symmetry. You can be a little bit more descriptive with your composition. Then you can define your depth of field. So you can have words like shallow depth of field, deep focus, motion blur, whatever you want. You can give those orders to these photography models and they will figure it out. They'll know what those mean. You can also use professional photography terminology in whatever, you could say use distorted fracture lens on this or whatever, or make it look like there's tape over top of the lens for some more interesting looking prompts. For the artistic models like Seedream 4, Seedream 3, reference art movements and art styles. So Bauhaus movement, 1928 Art Deco or whatever. It's going to give you a lot more consistent, specific image to what you want. Include the artistic techniques. So, if you're going to talk about brush strokes, if you're going to talk about color blending, if you're going to talk about ink bleed, whatever it is, include those artistic techniques. You can mention famous artists without copying them by saying in the style of or influenced. There are going to be certain models that restrict that. And this is not a Kittl thing. We are obviously open and honest about what the models are. You're selecting the model and you're using it. The models have their restrictions, over certain words, certain artists, certain things that you may prompt or not prompt. We receive inquiries about this. Those models are what's being used. We've just housed them in Kittl along with our aspect ratios and editing power. But, if a certain AI model says you're not allowed to use a certain name or an artist word, then choose something else. It's okay. Define the mood and the emotion. Define the tone of what you're trying to create when you're using Seedream 4 and 3, and then specify the medium. Is it an oil painting? Is it a etched wood carving? Is it watercolor? Is it vibrant digital art? Specify the artistic medium. And I think you're going to get a much, much better, specific, consistent image to what you want. Okay, I know that this video contained a ton of information all in one sitting. I know we looked at a lot. I know I threw a bunch of words at you for you to go and create some of your own prompts. Now, a lot of the things I showed you, they're all linked down in the description for you to check out. Now, you let me know what would be more helpful to you in the comments, okay? Do you want more videos explaining how a certain generation was made, which in any of the flows templates that you see on Kittl, including the bundles, you can click on and see the prompt. We do that so that you can easily copy it and create your own prompt. Or if you want more from scratch explanations of building prompts, if that's what would be more helpful to you, let me know in the comments. Or if you want to see more flows of how you would edit certain images to be different in different environments using something like Nano Banana, those are all a little bit different niches, a little bit different flavors of using AI prompting, but we want you to feel more comfortable and better at it. And like I said, you don't have to be a master at it, although some of these advanced strategies here at the end there were a little bit more mastery, but we want you to be able to just craft the prompt in the template that you want, and then, you know, put into that template your different prompt specifications, and then create the art that you want, or the image, or the mock-up, or whatever you need. So you let me know in the comments, which one do you want to see? Let me know which of the bundles is your favorite, okay? I think that the film photography ones are my favorite, but we have so many more in Kittl that you can just go click on that. It just says AI prompt bundles, and you just click that link down in the description. It's going to show you a feed of all of them, and you can go look through all of them, grab those guides and things like that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate your time and attention. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other videos like it, and we will see you in the next one.